Hi, team. So in a few moments, you'll be seeing the feedback from the panel from Sherry, Ivan, and Mark Dussault. And I thought I would just preface it with a few comments of my own. What you'll see is that they took the nugget of your idea, and they were very excited about that nugget in the sense of a kiosk outside of the Belfry. And what they did was they very naturally in a way, worked through the PPCO process themselves. They saw a lot of potential in the idea. They also had some concerns. And what you'll hear is one of the main concerns was actually having a place to sell tickets doesn't seem to be the primary need. However, having a presence outside the Belfry is very attractive. Another concern was around cruise ship passengers and whether going after people who are only in town for 10 to 12 hours is their priority. Now, they did express some skepticism around that, and it will be up to you how to react to that skepticism. It might be that they do not see what you see, and in writing your paper, you stick with that idea, or it might be that you revise, and that's completely up to you. So in all, I think you'll be pleased with the feedback. It definitely provoked some really strong discussion. And something that I thought I'd mention because it didn't come up with you, but it came up in the discussion for another team, was that if you're moving off-site, Ivan tends to have questions around what happens to the brand of the Belfry that's so connected to the building. So in terms of process, as I wrote you in the email, I was very, very impressed with your process. And as I reviewed, I'll just kind of flip through. I have your slides printed out, and I'll make a few comments. And I thought you had a very good summary up front in slide 2, which Ivan expressed concern about the ability to attract new patrons without changing the core of the theater's entertainment format. Now, this sounds like a small thing, but I thought you very succinctly caught what he was expressing. Sorry about my poor English. It's getting a little late. So next, if I can skip forward, as I mentioned in the email. Now, I had written to you after you'd posted for week 3 in the clarification stage, and I asked what went right. And something that I'm seeing here that is very impressive was the rigor with which you developed your problem statement. And I don't know if any other team did this, with actually putting as much effort into the convergence around developing the problem statement as you did, for example, the convergence of some of the convergence that took place in the transformation stage. So to me, that's a real aha moment in terms of how do you come up with a focused and creative idea? Well, let's start with actually focusing your problem statement. Now, the next thing I thought was very interesting was 2 things. The research you did on attendance, and that you acknowledged how good attendance is, but then how you interpreted that data, because you said, well, we found that this could still be improved upon, and I'd be curious about that finding and why you believed it could still be improved upon. Is the problem low attendance now, or is the issue that as this clientele ages even more, that it will not sustain itself? So I sort of was curious about, given that you were looking at this good attendance record, how you came to the conclusion, well, we have to improve on that. So then what I found really interesting was, and I don't know, I could be reading this wrong. I'm picking up clues from what I'm getting from your process, but you were actually in it. And what I found really interesting was it seemed like you made a leap when you were all of a sudden looking cruise ship passengers, and you had this idea around being recognized internationally, and then it seems like you had an aha that that all of a sudden we hit on one available possibility. About 400,000 passengers were aboard cruise ships that docked at Ogden Point. And all of a sudden, sort of this idea came that all these international people are coming to us, and maybe we can capitalize on it. Now, what will be interesting as you think about your papers in the coming week is, as you'll see, the panel is less concerned with going international than they are with the local market, and so you'll have a decision to make in terms of, no, you believe international is the way to go, and you sort of continue when you write your next paper, your first paper, you go down that road, or you say, wow, thinking about international opportunities is what it was, the jumping off point that brought us to this great idea around having kiosks out in the community, but we're going to let go of this vision of going international. Now, again, I really want to stress that this is your choice. Just because Ivan says something, he is the client, but in this case, he's not the final word. And if you believe in that vision, you should continue to develop it in your next paper. On the other hand, if what he's saying resonates with you, then you should consider revising it. So what I found interesting there was how you sort of somehow the creative process, took you to this solution to this stretch goal of going international. And I'm wondering how that happened, in terms of what happened in your process that enabled you to come to this idea of where to find an international clientele and to recognize it as a good idea and to sort of develop it. And that actually is all. I thought this team was very interesting in terms of balancing, as I wrote in my email, in terms of balancing a structured process, and you seemed very highly structured, while at the same time having the flexibility to say, wow, that's a great idea, and we're going to converge on it. Looking forward to reading your papers, and please let me know if you have any questions. I'll hand you over now to the panel.
I was just saying that just reading through your recommendation for kind of off-site box office and presence in other parts of the city is an interesting idea. As I was leaving the Shaw Festival many years ago, it was just after the SARS epidemic in Ontario, and they had Ontario Arts Marketing, which was part of the Office of Tourism in the government of Ontario, come up with a considerable amount of funds to disperse to organizations who were looking to try and recover from losses out of the SARS. And Shaw set up a remote box office. One of their key audience draws was from across the border in the U.S. And they set up a remote box office, and it actually toured around. It was actually a moving van that toured. And it was interesting because it produced some startling results initially. It really generated ticket sales, and then it stopped. And it stopped dead. And after the initial month, and I don't know that they ever really studied it enough or analyzed whether it was a traffic pattern problem or what it was. But they never really analyzed why it failed. It did. It started out to great success, and then just kind of crashed in itself. As a concept, it was more than a box office. And so as a concept, I would look at this as expanded well beyond a box office. Selling tickets now, we're up to 27% of our ticket sales are happening online. I don't see that reducing over time. I see that growing over time. I think the actual location of where you buy a ticket is less of a concern to people now. Often, I'll go to events where I don't have a hard ticket. I've got a confirmation number that's on my smartphone, and that's all I need. So the actual location where you buy a ticket is less critical and less interesting than the concept of being a presence remotely and certainly in the Inner Harbor in summer or in other locations or in some of those communities. So as a concept, I would want to see that expanded more to see what cost benefits are there, what the true cost implications are of trying to do that kind of thing, and then analyzing what the potential benefit is. I think. So that, to me, it's an interesting concept in that perspective.
And I find it interesting thinking how, so this allows people who would not have known about the Belfry to know that it is a place to go. It's something that you must see when you're in Victoria. So I would be really interested in seeing that expanded. Yeah.
I think, the idea of selling tickets at a kiosk, I think, is a bit of a no-goer, and that's just because of all of the bylaws around Victoria and what happens around the Inner Harbor and what you can and can't do. That's a non-starter right there. I think the other kind of problem with this is how people are coming to Victoria. So, it's all great. People say, why don't you get the cruise ship traffic? Well, the cruise ships are here usually for about 8 to 12 hours. And a lot of times that doesn't coincide with when our shows are on. So it's a fundamental issue. And we don't have the money to kind of compete with Butchart Gardens, for example, which just kind of bombards buses. And it's just a carpet bombing of marketing. And while I like the idea, I think just the sheer volume of dollars you'd have to throw into it to kind of make a mark that way would be pretty extraordinary.
In terms of, Mark, you weren't here at the beginning when I sort of talked about process. So the teams have come up with this idea, and they are going to be looking at it again over the next few days. Mm-hmm. What's the seed in here that you would say is might be exciting to develop?
I think one of the seeds that could work from taking off of this is to, as Ivan mentioned, with using a smartphone, is developing. I think one thing that's underdeveloped is in Victoria is how people use their phones when they engage with a new community, and I think there might be something that could be taken from that and added into here, just so that, for example, using tools like Foursquare or other things where people could actually find out what those must-sees are. Mm-hmm. Because I think for us, we're a must-see for some people that we're not a must-see for others.
So if I could just ask you, in terms of the you're saying, let's just say, imagine that the cruise ship market isn't a no-go. Yeah. Because here's all these people coming. Can you see any way of tapping into them or any potentials to explore there?
Well, I'm just really interested in whether it's cruise ship people or people who are coming here for many reasons, or people who are already here, knowing that the Belfry exists and that it is an exciting place for them to have an experience. Because there are people who don't know that. And so having, maybe there are ways and places for them to be sparked with that idea. And just this idea of a physical location is interesting to me. I'm not sure, the practicalities of it, but there's something there.
Yeah, I think that if I were to think about developing the idea of a physical location that's off-site to generate information and interest about the Belfry, I'd be more interested in longer-term transient populations than short-term transient. Yeah. And when I say that, I think of colleges and universities, who are largely made up of short-term but extended transient population. So if I'm after a population that is not going to necessarily build into a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year commitment, but I am interested in populations or demographics that are shorter term, then it would not be an 8 to 12 hour cruise ship stop. Right. It would be a 4-year undergrad student or a 2-year postgrad student who are here for an extended period of time. And so having locations may be more interesting in a place like the university than at the Inner Harbor.
But in new places, I think that's That's really exciting.
Thank you.